Hi guys, Diana here, and today I wanted to go over my 1 year breastfeeding journey with my daughter Riley. She is currently 12 and a half months old and she does breastfeed still. I do plan to continue breastfeeding her as long as she wants, and I actually hope that she breastfeeds for quite a while, which I'll kind of get into a little bit later. I want to start off talking about how we started our breastfeeding journey though. I do consider myself lucky in the sense that we did not have any major hurdles to start our breastfeeding journey, but that doesn't mean that it was easy or seamless. When Riley was born, she did immediately latch on her own and she was able to feed, which I was very thankful for. But that being said, it was a very painful latch that she had. She was a nipple feeder rather than being a breastfeeder. So she had a very shallow latch and it was very painful. And it did take me quite a while to rectify or fix that. Probably a couple weeks to get her to consistently latch better. Which in the grand scheme of things isn't a big deal, but at the moment in the time when you're dealing with painful nipples, like, it's hard to say like, oh, don't worry about it, you know, it'll be worth it in the end. Like, because in the moment when your nipples hurt and your baby's feeding off of them all throughout the day, you know, it's hard. But, so what did I do to try to fix that? Honestly, I'll say in the very beginning, like the first few days, I didn't even really try to fix it at all. It overtakes your life when you have a baby, and this is my first baby. She's my only daughter at the moment. And you're just, you know, all the preparing you can do, you're not really prepared. So, for me personally, I just dealt with the pain, and even though I knew that I needed to fix her latch in those first few days, like, I wasn't ready to have to deal with it. Once I did start dealing with it, it was a lot of unlatching her, getting her to latch back on, unlatching her, getting her to latch back on, because I had to basically shove my nipple into her mouth as quick as I could before she would snap shut. She's like a little crocodile. Like, she wanted to snap really quickly. And a lot of babies, because they're very eager for a feed, or they're just very eager to, you know, they want to suck just to like make themselves feel better. It soothes them. So, you know, she wanted to suck. You know, out of a 24-hour day, she was probably on my breast like 12 hours a day. Like, not even exaggerating. So there was a lot of taking her off the nipple and popping her off, putting her back on. And it wasn't easy to get her to basically create a better latch. She did not have a tongue tie. She did not have a lip tie. I had multiple people look at it, and it didn't even look like she could have one. So she was fine in that sense. It was just that she was very eager to get on, so she would always latch before she could get the whole thing in. But she was able to get the whole thing in and have a really good latch. She just didn't do it well on her own to start. So I did have to kind of train her to do that. And over time, she learned that, hey, when I have a good latch, it's a lot easier to drink. So once she picked up on that, she did want to have a good latch on her own. So like I said in the beginning, Riley was definitely a big comfort sucker. So our breastfeeding relationship was, I mentioned it, like I was feeding her like half a day. She wasn't always consistently feeding, but she would like to comfort suck and stay on. And if I'd pop her off, she would get very upset. So I would just spend my days holding her, laying down with her, just all sorts, because she always wanted to be attached to my breast, basically. So I'm bringing that up because some people might not think that that's the right thing to do as an attachment parent. Well, like, I don't just call myself an attachment parent because I think I need to follow the rules. Like, this is what feels right to me. To me, that's where she wanted to be. You know, she was carried inside of my stomach 24 hours a day for like 10 months, or well, technically 9 calendar months. She was in me for 41 weeks. You know, she wasn't ready to be put down all the time. She wanted to be held. She wanted to be comfort sucking. Like, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. So I just let her keep doing that. And it did establish a nice strong bond with her. And she was always able to feed as much as she wanted to. That being said, Riley was a very slow gainer to start. So I did get a lot of pressure from midwives and everything to feed her from a bottle. Well, I should actually backtrack. I didn't get pressure to feed her from a bottle from the beginning. In the beginning, they wanted me to feed her from a cup. So I did express, in the beginning, I tried expressing, and let me tell you, I got like this much milk in a cup, and she wouldn't drink any of it. And it took me a long time to get that much milk in a cup. Because my body was making exactly what it needed for her to feed. So the second she was done feeding, it was hard for me to get anything extra out because my body was making what she needed and she took what she needed. And they told me like after I'd feed her to try to give her like extra in the cup. And Riley wasn't actually hungry. She was getting what she needed. So she was rejecting the milk in the cup. Basically, she was like refusing to drink it. She wouldn't lap it up. If I tried to force her to, she was just spitting it up. So it wasn't doing any good for her to have that extra milk. And I'm glad I didn't get into that cycle, because I think a lot of times when you get into that cycle, you know, when you're pumping all the time, then you start overproducing. And then Riley actually did go through a phase where I was overproducing and she was having explosive green poos. But I was getting so much pressure to try to feed her more because she was a slow gainer. That in those first few weeks, you do question yourself. And in my heart, I felt that she was fine because she was very alert. Whenever she was awake, which was like a lot for a newborn, she was awake more than what would be considered normal, but she was very, very alert. Well, I wouldn't say more than normal, but like, I don't remember exactly what the hours were, but I know that whenever I would read for like how long a baby should sleep, she always slept on the smaller end of that amount, and she was awake for the larger end of the amount of what's normal. Like I said, very alert, looking around, like every midwife, every friend that came to visit, every family member, they'd always say, oh, she's so alert. She had great head control. She would look around, and she was hitting all her milestones either when she was supposed to or a little bit early. So I didn't have any reason to believe that there was anything wrong with her, minus the fact that her weight was light. So like I said, I felt like she was okay, but I was getting a lot of pressure. And as she got older, that pressure was turning to like, oh, you know, never family or friends because they knew me better, but definitely the midwives kind of like would insinuate along giving her like extra feeds from like formula or to pump more. And I'm really glad that I resisted that, because after just like the one time of trying to feed her from a cup and her rejecting it, I was like, you know what, she's getting fed plenty. She doesn't need to eat anymore. I was paying attention to her nappies, of course, and she was wetting her nappies more, like way more than the minimum they look for, and she was pooing in her nappies way more than the minimum. So she was definitely getting enough food in. There was no reason to believe that she wasn't getting enough. She just is a slow gainer. And now, in hindsight, now she's like, you know, 12 and a half months old. She's consistently been a slow gainer, but she's followed her own growth curve perfectly. So she was always just meant to be a small baby that was a slow gainer. But of course you don't know that in your baby's early days. So I would recommend, if you end up in that kind of a situation, to just like what I did was I just paid attention to everything else. Everything else was like falling into place. There was no reason to believe that she had anything wrong with her. But it would have been really easy at that point in time to just go, oh God, she's not gaining fast enough. I need to put her on formula. I mean, now she's like 12 and a half months old. She's like the healthiest baby I know. Like, she's great. So I'm really glad that I never made the choice to put her on the formula just because she was a slow gainer. And also, like I said, like, she had the latch issues that we overcame quickly. I will say that I had read this book, Ina May's Guide to Breastfeeding, by Ina May Gaskin. I read this book while I was pregnant. I read it, I think, in my like second or third trimester. I don't remember. I think I might have read it in my third trimester because I wanted it to be fresher in my memory. Plus, I kept it with my birthing supplies. So I was planning for a home birth. It is not what ended up happening for me, if you're interested in that. I will link it down below, or you can look back into my older videos, but I ended up having a hospital birth, but that's fine. But I did keep this with my birthing kit, so it would be on hand. I might have actually had it in my hospital bag. I don't remember. I didn't end up using it in hospital because I didn't need it. But the thing is I kept it close by because this book is like, as you can see, like a lot of people think breastfeeding is super natural, easy, it'll just come to you. Obviously there is a lot to be said about breastfeeding. Like this has a lot, which is great. And it gives lots of tips and like just different things that can happen that you might deal with. So I highly recommend reading this book before you have your baby, because I guarantee you once you have your baby there's no way you're going to read this. Like it's just not going to happen. I also read loads of just articles on the internet, and to me this is the biggest tip you can do going into your breastfeeding relationship journey, whatever. If you want to breastfeed your baby, do a lot of research. Do not assume that it is going to be easy and just come naturally to you, because I will say that out of all the mamas I know, and like even just like watching ones on YouTube, but like my friends in real life, like pretty much everybody had problems with establishing a breastfeeding relationship with their babies. And at the same time, they always said, oh, well, you know what? I didn't do any research on it. I thought it was going to be really easy. Even though they've heard time and time again that X person had this problem, Y person had this problem, Z person just completely gave up because they just couldn't do it. Like, do research ahead of time and be prepared, because it's not going to be easy. And if you were so lucky that it is easy for you, I don't think you'll ever regret being prepared anyway. I mean, you're not going to think back and go, oh man, I can't believe that I read that book. That was a waste of my time. I mean, just be prepared. Be prepared for anything. Know the different, like, you know how to get a baby to latch before you have a baby. Obviously, when you're reading about it, like, it's very hard to imagine when you don't have a baby. But those little tips and tricks, like, at least if you have them in your brain and then you have a midwife telling it to you, like, it's familiar to you. You've heard it before. And it's not just a completely new thing and you're so frazzled with a new baby that you can't deal with it. It's so easy in those first few weeks to just give up, because you've got a lot to deal with and you want your baby to eat. Like, eating is a basic need. So, you know, if you feel like you're having a lot of trouble, it's really easy to just fall back on formula when, you know, you're overwhelmed. So just be prepared as much as possible and do a lot of reading. I mean, I don't care how busy you think you are before you have a baby, you have time to read books and stuff, because if you don't have time to read a book before you have a baby, then you know what? You're not going to have time for that baby when that baby's born. Because once you have your baby, all you will think about is, oh gee, what did I do with myself before I had a baby? Because I always thought I was busy, but I'm busy now. Like for me, I think back to before I had Riley and I'm just like, what did I do with my time? Like, I have no idea what I did with my time. I feel like I just wasted time, because if I went back into time and I had that much time, I feel like I could be like 3 times more productive. Like, I could just do so much more. I have no idea what I did with my time. I feel like I just sat around and did nothing all day. I know that's not true, but I'm just so much more efficient with getting things done now that I have a baby. So you have time to read, definitely. So Riley was exclusively breastfed for the first 6.5 months of her life, and that's when we introduced solids. So from 6.5 months to now, currently, she does still only breastfeed from the boob. We don't pump and give her bottles. Mostly just because she won't drink from a bottle, but also because I do think that breastfeeding goes beyond just the milk. She also gets a lot of comfort from being on the breast that she would not get from drinking from a bottle. And that just kind of goes more with like attachment parenting thinking, you know, because I want her needs to be met as much as possible. And I do think that, you know, being close to me and against my skin makes a big difference compared to a bottle. I'm not knocking bottle feeding at all. There were definitely moments that I've tried to bottle feed her, just because it would be easier. and it never worked, and it wasn't worth the hassle of trying to figure it out. Because I've tried to bottle feed her, I think 3 or 4 times, and she's 12 and a half months old. So obviously I never really tried that hard, but to me, like, I'd still prefer to breastfeed her anyway. So moving forward, or actually I'll say, so from 6 and a half months till currently, she still breastfeeds quite a bit. So at this point she breastfeeds about like 5 to 7 times a day. It really depends on like what's going on. I mean, she sometimes even only breastfeeds like 4 times a day. Like, she's definitely cut down, and her feeds are a lot quicker. So if she's breastfeeding during the day, she might only feed for like 5 minutes. She might even only feed for 2 minutes. Like, she just has a quick suck. Like, she drinks really fast, and then she's off and she's done and she's doing her thing. But at nighttime, when she's going to sleep, she tends to have a longer feed. Then she'll feed for maybe, I don't know, it depends on how tired she is. But if she's not falling straight to sleep, maybe she'll feed for about 10 minutes and then go to sleep. And she always, like, at this point in her life, she will feed for about 10 minutes, pop off, and go to sleep. When she was a newborn, she would feed, and then she would tend to comfort suck throughout the night. So she would rarely unlatch. Now she definitely always unlatches. She doesn't sleep attached to me. Once in a while, if she's got something going on, like really bad teething, or when she had a fever, then she will comfort suck. But in general, she doesn't comfort suck much anymore. Sometimes in the middle of the night, she will wake up and have a quick suck, like just like 2 or 3 sucks, and then fall straight back asleep. So that's kind of a comfort thing. Like, she has something that kind of wakes her a little bit, and she'll just go suck, 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 fall back asleep. And when she's waking up, she'll have a feed that might last a little bit longer, because she's kind of in that hazy phase of her life. But otherwise, during the day, very, very quick feeds. When she was born, her feeds could be like an hour long, because it could take her a long time to get what she needed. And the thing is yes, it's hard to feed a baby for an hour and a half, especially when you're doing it 8, 10, 12 times a day. Do the math. You are spending every waking hour feeding your baby. But that being said, that's just nature's way. Like, that's nature's way of getting you to produce what you need to, you know, feed your baby. So as easy as it may seem to a lot of, like, I had midwives kind of say that an hour was too long to feed her, and that I should be popping her off, because, like, clearly she wasn't eating anymore. And I would never pop her off. Like, I would just ignore them, because to me, if she was still on me, that she wanted to be on me, I wasn't going to pop her off. And I'm really glad I didn't, because I think if I did, I would have harmed our relationship. What is that noise?
Line noise.
They just came back. They were out on a walk. But I think I'm almost done anyway, so I'm going to end this, because I'm 18 and a half minutes in. But what was I saying? Like, it's really easy in the beginning to, you know, just do anything to harm the breastfeeding relationship. And all I can say is go with what feels right for you. Don't listen to other people. You know, when people are telling you to do something different, like, I don't know, it's, everybody has different advice. So you can't just take other people's advice, because if you took everybody's advice, like, you'd be doing something different every single day, multiple times a day, because everybody you talk to is going to tell you something different. You got to do what feels right for you. I mean, me sticking to my own guns is what enabled me to have a good breastfeeding relationship. Otherwise, I mean, between midwives and, I mean, if my family members knew I wasn't so headstrong, I probably would have gotten a lot more pressure to formula feed her, except I am such a headstrong person that they wouldn't even dare go there with me, because I can be quite nasty when people are questioning my choices. But I know a lot more people that aren't as headstrong, and they are a lot more timid about these things, and, you know, they would very easily take other people's advice. Moving forward, I actually hope that Riley breastfeeds for a long time, because you know, there's been a lot of research done on breast milk, and actually breast milk, the older your baby gets, the more concentrated it becomes in antibodies for your child. So, you know, when you're breastfeeding a 2-year-old or a 3-year-old, your milk actually has more antibodies per a milliliter than when it's born. And that's actually because, you know, your body is like smart enough. It knows that your 3-year-old is not drinking as much milk as your 1-year-old is. And also a 3-year-old is a lot bigger. So it's going to need more antibodies, because it's just like, you know, an adult needs more medicine than a little baby does. So it becomes more and more concentrated with medication, not medication, sorry, I'm like losing the plot. It becomes more and more concentrated with antibodies the older your baby gets. And to me, that design in itself is proof that we should be breastfeeding as long as our child wants. So I actually hope that Riley doesn't choose to wean until she is, you know, like well into toddlerhood. Obviously, it's up to her. It's her decision. If she doesn't have any like desire to breastfeed, I'm not going to force her to by any means. But at the same time, like if she's 3 years old and she's still breastfeeding, I am not going to be like hoping that she weans herself like soon, because to me, like the best thing for her is to continue breastfeeding. You know, like it's so natural. Like I think worldwide, like most people are breastfeeding like until like even like 4 years. Like that is normal. I'm not saying like that you have to stop after 4 years. I'm just saying that like worldwide, like that's actually quite normal. It's developed countries that have formula and they're pushing that stop breastfeeding like, you know, at 6 months. And most people actually stop even before 6 months, but that's just like, that's like the magic number where they say, oh, your baby's 6 months, like you can stop now. I don't agree with that at all. Otherwise, we wouldn't be creating things like extra antibodies as our baby gets older. Like clearly our babies are still meant to drink that milk, or we wouldn't be creating it in such a perfect way to suit them. Hi, baby. You guys want to see my baby? This is what you look like when you drink milk for 12 and a half months. Let's get you out of your coat, little girl. So that's all I'm going to say for now. If you guys have any questions or you need any more help or tips on breastfeeding, please let me know. If I missed the plot on answering things or even like just making any tips, because I feel like there's so much that could be said about this that, you know, I'm sure I forgot to go over things. Put it in the comments down below. I'll either answer you directly, or if it seems like really important, I might make another video on it, because I don't know. I don't even know if I was very helpful. But I will say the biggest tip I can give is definitely read this book. Beyond that, actually, I'll link this book down below. And also, hi! Say hi, guys! Say hi, Riley! Also, just do as much research as you possibly can before you have your baby. It's going to help you out so much. It'll make such a big difference between establishing a breastfeeding, establishing a breastfeeding relationship easily, or not even easily, just like sanely, keeping your sanity while you're establishing it when you have that knowledge, versus having a lot of troubles and just feeling like you're losing your mind and you've got no support. Be your own support, have that knowledge, and then obviously when you have that knowledge, like still look for support around you, but you need to be the biggest advocate for yourself, because if you're not advocating for your baby, don't expect other people to do it for you. That's it. Say goodbye, guys. Say bye, guys. Say bye.